So let's begin at this end and at that end with the Minister and the Chief Executive, because we've just heard, literally in this room, the announcement of 3 pretty major investments there in terms of Lake Road, Port Erin, and the redevelopment of the former Villiers site. So what do you see as the potential impact of these investments, if it's not an obvious question?
Well, look, I think, it's been the missing jigsaw puzzle in some ways. I think for the island, it's using and attracting private investment into infrastructure is something that happens in other jurisdictions. It's not something traditionally that we've done here on the island. So I think the Island Infrastructure Scheme is a really good example of us doing that. We have the Manx Development Corporation, which tends to look at more public-owned sites or looks at those projects that aren't quite so commercial, where government can take a longer view. But I think it's really important that we recognise as an island, as an economy, what we're trying to achieve, and some of the conversations we've had this morning, wanting to increase our working age population. We need to have the infrastructures in place to be able to do that. We need to be able to grow the economy. We looked at some of the pressures that we have in health, other areas. We're not going to solve those problems unless we've got a growing economy. So it's important that we've got the infrastructure there we need to do that. I think that's one of the key things about it.
And Mark Lewin?
Thank you. And just to add to that, a lot of the work that the Department for Enterprise has done in the past around grants, where it's directly supported businesses, have always been based on clear business cases in terms of returning economic value. And you asked the question in terms of what this is going to look like. We've talked for a long time, and the government's talked about the need to see various sites redeveloped. It's talked about the need to see long-term, large-scale construction projects, not just ones the government's funding. And fundamentally, in these cases, this scheme has been constructed in a way that economic value should flow back. We talk about, and the Minister said about paying only even when the schemes are completed. Obviously, by then there's been substantial activity, substantial investment, and clearly then there is a legacy in terms of those redeveloped areas coming back. So, other jurisdictions have been doing this for a while. We haven't had this part of that jigsaw, and I think it's great to get those first 3 through. We still have a process. There are still some more in that pipeline we're working through, and I know the department will continue to look at this as a lever, really, to tip those sites just into the point of being viable, because they clearly haven't been for many years.
So in terms of the economic strategy then, how are you approaching this? How the realisation of it, if you like, how are you measuring it?
So there are various things to measure, and many of them are included in the presentation. Looking forward, and particularly the agencies here, and we'll hear from them, they're the workhorse out there doing business development, promoting the Isle of Man on a global stage and thinking about products. We record that, we measure it. Then, in terms of what's actually happening on the island, is that being converted? That gets measured as well, reported upon. And then that dashboard, and as the Minister said, it's very transparent. It's probably more transparent than it's ever been in terms of what we're seeing on the ground. And I really applaud both the fact that we had agency plans at the start of the year, said this is what we're going to do. Now there's been an interim update issued from all 4, and we will continue to do that as we go forward, being very, very transparent and accountable.
Let's talk about the agencies. I mean, there were 4... not that I'm wanting to take you away from this room, but there were 4 fascinating presentations this afternoon, actually, from the agencies as well, which I'd like to see, because they'll all offer a different perspective. Phil Adcock, if I may, they're public-private partnerships, really. So how do they play a role, as you see it, not only in advancing the objectives of the strategy, but also what early-ish notable successes have arisen from these collaborations?
Okay, thank you. So to answer that, I think it's worth just taking a step back and actually reflecting on why government established the agencies in the first place, because it was touched on in the presentation, but I think there's a little more to stay there. First of all, they were established to support sustainable economic growth. In the case of Digital Isle of Man, it's also there to establish the island as a centre of international excellence for the digital economy. And there's a third point, and that's about industry engagement. We're there to be a liaison point with industry and to work at industry's pace and speak to industry in their language. Yeah. Now, we're equipped to do that because we have industry boards. Industry lives on the coalface. It knows where the opportunities are. It knows where the barriers are that we need to knock aside to create growth. And the agencies have been designed to harness that. So this idea of having industry driving strategy, driving product, driving the way those are promoted, feeding into policy input where it's needed, is a huge win. And you only have to look at the calibre of the individuals who sit on the agency boards to see that that's working. You know, these individuals put their time aside out of busy schedules for free every month to make those strategic decisions, to evaluate risks, sometimes to look at programs and go, perhaps they're not delivering what was expected, and putting a stop to them. So my first point is the structures are there to really drive the economic strategy that the government's put forward. And I applaud government for putting the agencies in place for that reason. In terms of successes, I really look at that through two lenses. You know, the first thing that we're here to do is to actually support the existing sectors. Yeah. So 60% of our effort actually looks at how do we support those businesses that are here already, how do we grow them? And in terms of digital, our sector's around 2,500 jobs. I'll give you e-gaming as an example of how we go about that. So when the agencies were formed, I think it's fair to say the strategies were, the gaming strategy was fairly tired. We've gone from a peak of around 57 gaming licenses to around the mid-30s. And the direction of travel was all wrong. So one of the first things that the agency board did and the agency team was we looked at the strategy, we said, how can we reinvigorate this? We consulted with industry and created a new strategy which involved creating a new type of license. As the Minister mentioned before, you know, that's turned around. We're at 90 licenses now with all the investment, the economic growth, the jobs, the license fees that delivers into the economy. We set a target this year to open up a new market. With two of those licenses are actually Latin American facing, which is a market that we've never touched before. And the other point on supporting existing businesses, you know, we work as a business in Digital Isle of Man. We have an account management team. We account manage 174 businesses, and that means that they've got a consistent touch point in government when they need support. They're talking to someone that actually understands their business, has some history, has some context. That's really important. The second lens that I look at this through is then how do we unlock new opportunities, and that's where 40% of the effort in Digital Isle of Man comes from. Now, digital is a really unique sector. It's very fast-paced. It's characterised by change. We've got 4 completely new sectors in Digital Isle of Man since the agencies were established. We've actually got another one in our programme for this year, which has really come around or come onto our radar since we published our strategy for this year. Yeah, so I could talk all day about those, but I'll limit myself to 2. The first is a national broadband plan. That's the idea of getting high-speed, ultra-fast fibre into 99% or more of premises on the island. Now, I'm mentioning this because it's an enabler. If we want to attract people to the island, we need fast broadband. Digital's touching every part of our lives now. Similarly, to attract people to work, to attract businesses here, we need that infrastructure. So we're currently now at 90% of home passed, or of premises passed, which is really great. But we've also got a separate work stream, which is about increasing uptake. So at the start of the year, we had about 30% actual uptake of that fibre. We've pushed on that. We're now at 40%. We're aiming to get it to 50%. The second one I'd highlight was, and it was touched on by the Minister as well, was the fintech strategy. Now that was really born out of the work that we did a few years ago around blockchain, when it became clear that the island needed a more consistent strategy around fintech. So we approached that by going to talk to industry. We went to the sector. We said, what are your pain points? What are the things that need fixing that will actually help your business grow? We took that information, we consolidated it into some challenge statements, and then we actually syndicated that out globally to industry in the form of an innovation challenge. We said, come to the Isle of Man, solve these problems for us, and actually that approach turned out to be very, very successful. So we were inundated. The Minister mentioned 74 applications from 20 countries, 14 finalists. We had our Innovation Challenge finale in the summer, 300 to 400 delegates attending that, and whittled down to 3 finalists. Now, 2 of those have boots in the ground on the Isle of Man. We've got one in the digital identity space. It's employing 13, 14 people now. We have another, was Gibraltar base, that's now put boots in the ground on the island. Now, interestingly, 94% of the people who attended that finale day said they want to see another event. We are doing that, so we're running a challenge next year, but it's going to be a wider challenge. We're working with our sister agencies, we're working with the regulators, the FSA, the ICO, and the intention is to have challenges around fintech, around clean tech, which feeds into biosphere, and also around data and artificial intelligence, which are programs that we're actively working on in Digital Isle of Man.
So some tangible examples there, and I thank you for that. Let's move on to Visit, Ranald Caldwell, because obviously the announcements we've just heard have got potential impact for the tourism accommodation offering. What is Visit, as you see it? What initiatives has it got on the stocks, if you like, to boost both the visitor economy strategy and the economic strategy?
Thanks, James, and good morning, everybody. Just touching the first point in terms of the Island Infrastructure Agreement, fantastic news, because it's going to add the vibrancy of the va-va-boom that we need really to develop the visitor economy. So if we get 80 beds plus the other developments, it really puts us in a good position, because then that will then accelerate interest and investment from others that are in the pipeline. So great thanks to the Manx Development Corporation, to the Minister and to Mark for really making it happen. And that's what it's about. And I think generally, before I give an answer on the initiatives, I've been fortunate enough to be part of the team for 5 years, and I'm proud to be part of that team. But we've evolved, and we're now delivering, we're now being measured better than ever before. So it's good feeling to be here and to hear the announcements that are happening, that we are making a difference, and I can say that honestly, that we are. So in terms of the 4 initiatives that I'd like to talk about for the visit economy, I think for me, number 1 is very important in terms of the culture of government and the culture and how we work and how we set targets. We're now moving away from a sort of administration to very much a business development and sales culture within the visit agency. And that's not easy to embed, but we're moving in the right direction. So we've got performance management reinstated. We've got clear targets and objectives, or contributions, as we'd like to say, and we're delivering on those. And, you know, we're confident that we will reach our target this year. We're sort of tracking to about 306,000 visitors when the target was originally 300,000. So we're really coming back out strongly post-COVID. So we're very pleased about that. But culture is a lot of work, and that will deliver greater value for us going forward. I think the biggest change we've made in the visit agency, historically, we've been very much about a destination marketing organisation, but we're moving that very much into a destination management organisation. So we're owning the whole process, from you identifying a holiday in your couch at home, right through to getting here. We want to make sure that we deliver you the best experience, but extract the greatest value from you. So we're moving in that. And some examples of how that's actually manifesting itself on the ground. We've been able to recruit Deborah Heather, our new Chief Executive, an industry expert from the UK, who's making a real difference. And she's rubbing shoulders with the great and good of tourism in the UK, because she's the chair of the Tourism Society. So that's opening a number of doors. I think 2 years ago, we expressed interest to seek people from our core market. So we recruited or encouraged 2 board members to join us from the UK. We're in dialogue at the moment to get someone from the Irish market to join our board, volunteers, to help us in that journey to open up those markets to drive greater value from them. So that's very encouraging. We've now a full-time business development manager in the UK who's secured 121 new partnerships. Now, it's not about just tick, we've got a partnership number. We're getting into the stage of saying, these are the tools, what's your pledge? Can you deliver 50 visitors for us, 100 visitors? So we can then project more, with greater certainty what might come our way in the coming years. We're now looking at digital platforms. How do we present ourselves to the market? Some of these travel agents are saying to me, Ranald, I cannot sell what I cannot see. So we have to give that visibility of what we've got in our shop window, but make it accessible. You can book your electric bikes as well as your accommodation. So we're extracting a value from the consumer, but we're increasing the experience that they will have here. And we're making a noise. I think the Minister clearly outlined the noise that we're making in the UK or in the press. 292 articles have been written about us, more than the previous 4 years put together.
There's only one thing worse than being talked about, apparently.
Pardon?
There's only one thing worse than being talked about.
Yes.
Not being talked about. Yeah.
Well, the great thing about that is that that's manifesting itself into September's figures. So our shoulder season we're having the best shoulder season, or in September, certainly in one of the largest island self-catering units. It's the best September ever. So that profile is driving business to us. So we're encouraged by that. And it's making a noise. My passion is visitor first, getting it right first time. What's the experience? When you got visitors coming to home, you make sure that you get the best linen on, you get the china out, and you become a tour guide for the Isle of Man. But you take them to the places that you know look well, feel well. And I think we've all got a responsibility to make sure that we look the best we can. And I think Charles Guard is always a reminder that we don't. So we're involving Charles in setting up a visitor first at executive level. We've had one at an officer level for 3 years to try and fix some of the issues, which has worked well. But we need that ownership at a higher level, and that's what we're going to be driving towards. And then finally, and it's the big word, infrastructure. We need more accommodation. We need workforce, which causes me sleepless nights. How are we going to do and achieve that? I'd love that the industry would get to a position where we actually can have careers in tourism and create jobs for them. And then we've very strong relationships with the airport and the steam packet in terms of looking at how they're delivering and aligning our marketing strategies with theirs.
I'm aware I can see to my left the questions are coming in thick and fast. So I want to, and I can see everybody in the agency is very passionate about their own areas, which is great to see. Just move on to Steve Pickford, if I may, from a business perspective. How is business element fostering innovation and entrepreneurship, if I can put it that way?
Yeah, thank you and good morning. Well, first of all, I always think entrepreneurship starts at home with parents' guidance and into the education system, where we can teach our young people the skills and attributes they need to move into business. And I hope that when they get into business, they're mentored well, and they can maybe one day lead those businesses. So we've got to foster all those relationships very early on. From a business Isle of Man perspective, we try and support the youth first of all as much as we can through our STEM Fest and graduate support, if you like, and also as they move into business, we'll often support them through that career path as well. I think locally we have many entrepreneurs, many are in the room today, who we know. And again, you know, these guys set great standards, I think, for the youth to follow. We have numerous events going on where we can meet our entrepreneurs, from our food and drink festivals, where you'll see many of them, our markets and food and drink in particular. Some are more hidden, they're not kind of in the public eye. But I think, you know, moving forward, if we can continue to invest in our businesses, in our entrepreneurship, then the island's got, you know, a great future.
And Michael Crowe, just from the financial services sector point of view, what steps have been made in that space, do you think, since the strategy was launched last year?
Thanks, James. Well, the financial services sector is probably a little bit different to some of my colleagues here on the panel, because of the maturity of the sector and the breadth of the businesses that are represented here. We've got quite a broad diversity of strong international brands here on the Isle of Man. We've got over 9,500 people employed. Phil mentioned the history of the agency model, and certainly the growth of the financial services and professional services sector on the Isle of Man is one that's been built on partnership and public-private partnership. So that's something that you say we're well used to within our sector, and it's great that the agency structure formalises that and gives it more of a focus within government. In terms of activity that we've done this year to support the strategy, one of our key themes is to support our stakeholders in terms of both growth and innovation. So that's something that we've been ramping up over the course of the last 12 months in terms of some of the projects which the Minister mentioned in his speech. So we've got things like Insure Tech, which was a bit centred around the insurance sector. Insurance, you know, the largest component of our economy, and an area that we can see has got quite significant growth prospects. So that's been really successful so far in terms of helping support that industry and bring new businesses to the island. So we're looking to see that grow into the future as well and ramp up again next year. We've got a strong pensions sector on the Isle of Man, which is largely operated under the radar, really, for a number of decades. But we're actually the world leader in terms of provision of certain international pension products. And that was what the catalyst to another project that we've really kicked off this year around employee benefits and having the Isle of Man as a home for a broad scope of products that would support international corporates in terms of managing some of their workforce expectations. And perhaps the third and final point from me on this would be increasing our, I mentioned promotion, increasing our reach around the world and the impact of what we do. We've got a comprehensive international program where we're always working with our stakeholders in terms of what events do we support, where we promote, and where we market the Isle of Man. I think that's been successful in terms of raising the profile, both in terms of the events themselves and also in terms of press coverage and trade coverage. We're looking forward to that continuing as well. In fact, we're about to embark on a period in the next 3 months of quite significant activity in that regard. Onwards and upwards as far as that's concerned.
Thank you, gents. I'm aware we've got about a half an hour left of this session. I do want to devote that to the public. So I'm going to start the questions from the floor on Slido. Let us begin with this one. We are making moves to attract new people to the Isle of Man. What efforts are being made to attract those who have left the island for university or elsewhere? The question is effectively, why would they come back, and why would they come back now? Who would like to take that first? I'm looking at the department's chief executive, I think. Mark Lewin.
Thank you. And it is a great question. And I think all 4 agencies talk about this topic in terms of not just attracting new people, but about how we make sure we sustain, retain the people that are here. And in the case of young people like graduates, those that have gone and they've got links back here, how do we bring them back? So I think it probably goes right across all conversations in that space. Minister said before about locate, and there is specific focus in that perspective. I had a number of discussions around the graduate fair, and indeed with somebody that came here in the summer as a student, had a placement here, loved it so much, they finished their university degree and they came, and they now work for the department, helping take that message out to graduates. And so we have to keep working. We use the links through Department for Education that has the database in terms of the outreach to the students. We reach out, we talk to them, we talk about the opportunities we've got, we give them the opportunity to engage with us, attend events like the graduate fair. There are some fantastic opportunities, day by day across our economy. That's one of the real assets we have in terms of that breadth. It is incumbent upon us to keep telling them. When there was a survey done a few months ago, and again it said probably one of the top reasons why they think they don't want to come back just yet isn't that opportunity. They talk about cost of housing, they talk about leisure facilities. There are many facets to this, but that first one that says not aware that there's something that appeals to them or would give them an exciting career, that's where we can really focus on from a Department for Enterprise and explode that myth.
Okay. Interesting. Thanks, Mark. I want to put this to Ranald in the first instance. Has there been thought given to ensuring there's an adequate number of people to sustain employment in the lower paid sectors to support the increase in population and hold up these sectors, i.e. hospitality, retail?
It's certainly a challenge that we face. I know personally from an agency's perspective, we have a view to attract 150 new jobs per annum for the next 10 years to support the growth in the economy. So we've been looking at how we can actually bridge that gap, and it's not easy. And we've been working with a number of location agencies to see if they can support us. So we're looking at various schemes to try and come through. But I think from a business perspective, we're working closely together to try and address that. So it's not good news because it's one of the target lines that we're behind on, but we've had several discussions on it and with several external individuals, and I think we had a proposal going forward to see whether or not we could actually create a bank of staff similar to the hospital. So it's a worry.
Okay. Thank you. Let's change tack again. In fact, Steve might have a view on that actually before we do.
Thank you. Yeah, look, we have a huge range of sectors operating in the Isle of Man, and some exciting businesses that are always innovating across all of these sectors, run by great leaders and great entrepreneurs. As long as we continue to invest in those, this will help, I think, our youth come back to the Isle of Man and take up the lead in the future. Once they're here, we've got to make sure that they can enjoy themselves here. So investment in the local economy is critical. And we've got a number of initiatives going forward, as the Minister, mentioned earlier, that we're looking forward to getting, deeply involved with. And from December, we're going to see what the future looks like.
What's being done to attract female business leaders?
Well, I think this is something that's really developed over the last 20 years as I've been on the Isle of Man. Certainly a number of my boards were kind of 50-50, if you like, as far as the boards go. Our Business Isle of Man board and across these boards, women have a major role to play now. We've seen them come through the ranks, earn the worth, if you like, and now many of them are leading Isle of Man businesses, and it's great to see.
Phil, just want to change tack and bring you in. A question that's just come in. What is being done to cultivate locally grown tech firms?
It's a really, really interesting question, that, isn't it? I mean, we've had this concept of the entrepreneurial ecosystem, and it's something that's been under discussion pretty much since the agencies were formed. I think that, first of all, fostering an environment of innovation is just really, really important. We need to provide the platform to allow people to come here and innovate. We have this concept now of digital nomads, people who can work from anywhere. My daughter's just been to Sri Lanka and she sat in a cafe with people that were writing software. Well, how do you actually get those to come to the Isle of Man? So we need to create an environment where people, when they arrive here, they can see that there's a community of like-minded people that they can meet, they can discuss opportunities with. We need to make sure that there's opportunities for those businesses to obtain funding, that there's places for those businesses to actually, for those people to go and sit and work. So there's a number of different areas that we've attacked over the years which relate to how we create that sort of environment, and that's, for me, certainly the focus.
I want to touch on this now, although it could equally be asked this afternoon at a couple of the sessions. Do any of you have a view on the split between residential and buy-to-let purchasers of the new developments? Will there be incentives to support or disincentives? And will the banking industry be engaged to discuss funding closer to completion? Who would like to take that one first? Mark?
Certainly it's a question that comes up, and I think it was referenced in one of the questions last night as well. The land registry, which is part of the Department for Enterprise, went through a fee change structure last year and again this year. And one of the things it has done is ask that question about owner-occupier and about, for the first time, whether you're a resident or not. So to try and better understand what's happening in that market, it's up to this year, that wasn't a question that was asked as part of that process. It also introduced for the first time a surcharge on, it increased the rate on non-owner occupiers, and it introduced a further surcharge on those that are non-residents. So it's a step to say we get better data to help us make better decisions, and it's also a step to say we want to also stimulate to make sure that the market is responding and is available for on-island residents to live in their own homes. And again, at the other end of the spectrum, the prices, certainly from a land registry perspective, were reduced for owner-occupiers who live here, who want to buy their own accommodation at that first-time level. But it is definitely a question that comes up time and time again.
In terms of Michael, do you have something to add there?
Well, you asked, James, about the banks supporting individuals in terms of purchasing property. I think for those of you who were here for the previous panel, Matt from Lloyds was on the panel, and he confirmed that within the banking sector, where there's demand, there will be supply, and there are new products, I think, in development all the time for different aspects of banking and mortgage lending. So that's certainly something that we collectively support.
Do we know amongst this panel what incentives potentially, Minister, have been introduced to encourage empty properties to become occupied?
Yeah, and I think The Treasury Minister sort of touched on that this morning. I mean, there's ongoing work on that. There's a recognition there's an awful lot of properties across the island that are sitting empty. So I know there's a lot of work going on, discussions with local authorities about that to understand why they're empty, what the reasons are, what we can do to incentivise those properties being brought back into circulation. And I think the banks have a part to play in that as well. And are the packages they'll develop, because often getting a mortgage on a brand new property with a 10-year guarantee is one thing. It can be a challenge, I think, sometimes in older properties, but what initiatives can we bring forward in that space to help? And that's certainly a conversation we'll happily have with the banks, and we do have conversations about that. But I think more broadly, as we talked about the infrastructure scheme, MDC, more widely, the work that the business agency is doing, helping in planning, and we need to increase the supply of homes. We need the full range. We need rental properties. We need first-time buyers. We need a full range across the economy. So that's a challenge that we have to get on with. As someone said earlier in the previous discussion, it's not a bad problem in some ways, in the fact that there's huge demand there, but we've got to face that and bring forward that supply, but make sure we need that variety for all age groups, for all earning capacity, including first-time buyers.
I'm going to open it up to the floor now, I think. There's a couple more questions here, but we might try and bring those into the housing debate a little bit later. Is anybody on the floor? Just raise your hand if you'd like to ask a question in person, and we will come to you. If not, we will press ahead with Slido, because I know some people like to actually prefer to ask them anonymously, which is absolutely fine. No one at this stage. Well, in that case, we will press on. Question: what is being done to reduce barriers of entry for young tech entrepreneurs? Because this member of the public says set-up government fees are still very high compared to some other jurisdictions. Mark Lewin.
I think the subject, and there's a broad picture here, the fees are part of that decision for somebody to relocate jurisdiction. So there's definitely work in terms of promoting. We said before about making sure people understand the fantastic opportunities they're here and the way of life, the safety, all those aspects. In terms of the fees, that is something we're looking at, and through the Department for Enterprise, we've been doing a piece of work lately around how we compare to other jurisdictions. The Minister said before the plans to reform and suspend the work permit system and make it a much simpler process around registration and give that instant confirmation and absolute certainty to somebody that's coming here to try and remove friction, try and remove any uncertainty. But in terms of competitiveness, I think the fees and around immigration, again, that's in our control. Department for Enterprise already provides financial support to businesses, relocation incentives. It can pay it to the business. The business then can and does in some cases pay that to the applicant. So working with industry, there are things we can definitely do to make that pathway even easier.
Phil?
Yeah, I'd like to just go back to a point I made a little earlier, though, about creating communities. One of the barriers when you first arrive on the island is, who is it I actually talk to who does the same thing as me? How do I find them? It's something we're actively looking at in Digital Isle of Man at the moment, because we do see that as a real issue. When you arrive, there needs to be a way easily to find those like-minded people. So it is something we're definitely looking at.
Which sparks a thought for me. So locate this year for the first time. The people that have come through the journey, they've engaged, they've been through the portal, we've spoke to them, they've arrived. They've done orientation events, so they've hosted events for people who've arrived here to meet each other and in that way get into that broader networking event. I think we've done 4 now, so that's clearly something that also can help in terms of people when they arrive here.
Initiatives like this are obviously longer term, but I mean, where do you place initiatives like this, Ranald, in terms of not that one specifically, but in terms of how long have we got? I mean, we've got various strategies in place which last for 5 years, 10 years and beyond. But when do you need to start seeing something more tangible?
Well, certainly from a hospitality visitor perspective, just to expand on my previous response, we are hard hit because roles that become available in business, e-gaming or government or finance draw on this reservoir of stock that we've got, so we're depleted. So we've been banging the drum to try and look at solutions to try and fill that gap. There are some signs that we might be able to do so, but it will be looking further afield, unfortunately, to bring in workers from other jurisdictions. So we have that short-term pain that we have to get over, and get over it we will, but it will take, a brave heart to deliver on it, but I think we will.
Just want to ask you this question that's come in, again, slightly different, but what can we do to improve the reliability of the air journey to the Isle of Man with your visit hat on?
It's a difficult one. I think the airport director we've got, Gary Cobb, at the moment is doing a fantastic job, inheriting probably some of the stuff that he didn't think he was going to have when he got into the role. And he's certainly moving that forward. Dialogue with the airlines is better than it's ever been. I think, unfortunately, from a financial perspective, and a previous speaker in an earlier Treasury section, who'd want to run an airline? It's the most difficult thing in the world to do as a business. We, unfortunately, are the tail end of most of the journey. So anything happening from EasyJet, for example, coming from Nice to London and then on to the Isle of Man, if there's weather or disruptions in Europe, we feel the effect because it doesn't connect with us. So I think there's a debate to be had of how we stimulate those air carriers to us. And I think there's still an open debate on whether it's open skies or closed skies. So it's certainly, Gary's a member of our board, as is the steam packet. So we're forever discussing how we can improve the reliability. We've put a number on it. We think that we've probably lost something between 3,000 and 5,000 visitors this year because of the unreliability. And it's not just those who have been disrupted, it's that confidence of getting to the destination which actually stops them from booking in the first place. So it's certainly on the radar, excuse the pun, but both the air and sea are clearly in view from an infrastructure perspective, because without those air and sea bridges, our tourism doesn't grow.
It's an age-old discussion, Mark Lewin, open skies or closed skies?
I was just going to build on to say, as well as Gary sitting on the visit board, actually Department for Enterprise sits on a board around the airport, specifically working with Department of Infrastructure, and it looks at all these aspects. So which airlines, where we've had issues, particularly around staffing and helping support the case to make sure we understand. And I know there's been lots of, and the Chief Minister previously commented about that support to get that staff in place. As Ranald said, some of this is out with our control in terms of these other airlines, but the Department for Infrastructure in the last couple of months did publish expressions of interest, which is aimed at giving us a much longer term view. So the government in the last 12 months has stepped in and provided additional support to keep key routes going. And about now we need to formalise that and look at what the long term of that might look like. So I think this is a good example where we work closely with Department of Infrastructure and others, and we reflect the voices from industry, we reflect the concerns that are coming up, both from a visitor perspective, from a business perspective, and indeed from a resident perspective.
Open skies or closed skies?
So there was a piece of work done a couple of years ago, and the expressions of interest that went out a couple of months ago did say that we think on core routes, so particularly around the northwest and around London, some form of ongoing long-term relationships needs to be established. It doesn't specifically say whether that's open or closed, but we already have a range of incentives. So operating discounted fees to those that we want to come into those routes, but withholding them when the route is already saturated to avoid it being cannibalized. So we already have some levers. It's about applying those intelligently and doing them on a long-term basis. It may well be in the longer term there are more tools or levers that need to be thought about. That's what's actively being explored now as part of that process, led by the Department of Infrastructure, but with other parts of government supporting that.
Okay, thank you. Do you know what? I'm assuming there are no questions from the floor. In this case, then we'll just round up, but really by asking this to each of you, starting with the Minister. We'll move along from right to left, if we may. Can each of you tell me the one thing you are most excited about for the next 12 months, and the one thing that you are most worried about?
Well, I think I don't think we should underestimate today's announcement. I think there's a lot of work gone into this. I'm delighted that we're seeing this collaboration between public and private investment. we all know the challenges on the island. We talk about it, and all these things we're talking about that they can't be seen in isolation. The links across so many areas, and it's making sure we're keeping those links and moving things forward together. So I do think that I'm really excited about this new chapter in relationship and being able to really unlock investment, private investment, sensible government incentives that we get a return through exchequer benefit, really providing the facilities and the infrastructure that we all talk about, we need on the island. I think, it's been touched on. We've got this visitor strategy, wanting, 500,000 visitors in 10 years' time. We're wanting 500 service beds. This is a big step towards that. We're needing that modern, efficient, cutting-edge office facilities. We need all of this stuff. We need the infrastructure that young families want to see. So I'm really excited about that direction going forward. And look, I'm as worried as everybody. Globally, these are really challenging times, and there's lots of headwinds. But I fundamentally believe that the issues that were identified as part of the Island Plan and the economic strategy, the challenges that we recognise in the KPMG report, they haven't gone away. They're still there. They're still as relevant. It's just making it harder to push forward, but we still got to knuckle down and push forward. But yes, of course, global events, macro events are really challenging at the moment.
Steve?
Thank you. I'd have to say the local economy strategy is the thing that excites our department the most. We've got a lot of work to do on it yet. It's all to come. But if we think of a vision for the future for our towns and villages, and that's going to make it a vibrant place to live and work, then that's what we're all striving for. What that should do is attract our people back, but hopefully other people from other jurisdictions to come and work in the Isle of Man. What I'm most worried about, it's a very competitive market. We've got to move forward quickly. We've got to do what we do it well, do it right, and get the investments in the right places.
Ranald?
Quite simply for me, it's working with a great team within the Department for Enterprise, clear focus on what we have to deliver. And when we start delivering and see those numbers coming through, that's when you get the joy. And it's working for an industry on behalf of an industry that we need to engage with more, because we're the voice of that industry and the voice of the customers. So I think we're like in a rugby scrum. We're all getting closer together and we're all pushing in the same direction, is how I would sum it up. So what keeps me awake at night?
Probably the Rugby World Cup in Ireland.
Yeah, well, we're going to win it. And,
hopefully.
Is development on the accommodation front to make sure we've got the beds to support that growth. And as you tackled me earlier, is in relation to workforce.
Michael?
I think similar to the other comments, what excites us is delivery of the programme that we've got, working with our sector, supporting growth, continued growth and innovation. In terms of worry, what worries us or what keeps us awake at night? I mean, that is an interesting question. The Minister referred to various headwinds that we see from time to time, but I'm reminded about Jonathan's presentation earlier about the way that the Isle of Man has grown in recent decades. I mean, in my lifetime, the population has nearly doubled. The economy has probably fundamentally changed a number of times, and we've been able to roll with the punches and to innovate and grow on the back of it. So I think. Threats become opportunities, and the Isle of Man has got a great story in terms of our history of continued innovation and evolution to tackle those and to come out on the right side.
Phil?
So I'm a techie, so you're going to get a techie answer to this one. We all know that access to skills is a huge challenge globally, but just equally here on the island. So I'm quite excited around the opportunities surrounding artificial intelligence to improve that. McKinsey produced a report a couple of months ago, and it estimates that 60 to 70% of people's jobs can be supported in some way by AI. Wouldn't it be great if we can use AI to free people up for more productive tasks? That's not about people losing their jobs. It's just about actually pointing them at the things that make the businesses they work for more productive and makes them more productive. I'm also excited about just getting out to businesses and communicating the opportunities that surround AI and just explaining, how AI can actually help people improve businesses, make them more efficient, make them more profitable. In terms of what worries me, I'm a Yorkshireman originally, and you know, it always comes back to money for me. You know, I do have concerns around funding. I think it's really important that we make sure that the agencies have got the financial support they need to continue these essential business development activities. You know, in digital, we're targeting 300 jobs this year. That's 4.6 million of exchequer benefit. We did 268 the year before. There's something like 37 million pounds that's gone back to the exchequer just in terms of job creation as a result of these activities. So I'm very keen to make sure that we continue to be supported in, you know, when the money gets tight.
And finally, Mark.
Thank you. And I guess the benefit of going at the end is I get to kind of replace some of those. Certainly from my perspective, two key things, and they've both been touched upon. I think we are entering a real new phase in terms of redevelopment. I think the announcements today from a government perspective in terms of sitting alongside developers for key brownfield sites, I think is really important. And the work that the MDC has been doing, it's been on the ground already. It's in the final stages of another one, and it's nearly about to announce another one. I think that's a really important moment, and there's a lot of external investment coming in at the moment as well. The other thing, and Phil said, again, my background was a lot of technology as well. In the last 12 months, the developments and just the iterations in AI, I've been hugely awakened and excited by it, and I think it's absolutely breathtaking, the potential of some of that. And as Phil says, our challenge is to harness it in a very positive way for some of the things that pose challenges to us. I think in terms of the things that we worry about, and it goes back to Jonathan's presentation before, talked about balance. You know, there is a finite focus, there's a finite set of resources. It's really important we know and have a laser-like precision to where we work on. We're surrounded by ideas. You know, money has to be focused in the right place. Industry has, again, a finite balance in terms of and bandwidth of what they need to do. And we've talked about population. Whilst we do need to bring new skills, new people, new residents to our shores, we also need to make sure there are opportunities and there's the infrastructure to support them and our existing people. But that goes back to, we have a plan. It's important we keep to that. It's important we track it. It's important we share progress, and we will continue to do that in a positive way.